Hello and welcome. I'm Jeannie Long, Executive Director of Chicago Collections Consortium. And thank you for joining us today for our program, Conversations with Chicago Collections. Today we'll be speaking with Laura Lorenzana, who is the Corporate and Family Archivist at Ozinga. I'm proud to share that Ozinga Corporation is one of CCC's corporate partners and supports CCC's efforts. Please note that today's discussion will be recorded and available for viewing again on Chicago Collections website and YouTube channel. And if by chance you've missed any of our previous conversations with Chicago Collections or any of our other fabulous programs, you can always find them on our website and Chicago Collections YouTube channel. We'd like to begin Chicago Collections with Chicago Collections Land Acknowledgement Statement, which reads, Chicago Collections acknowledges and is grateful for the Native peoples who laid the foundation for the diverse indigenous nations that reside in Chicago today. When you visit our member organizations and when you experience Chicago's outdoor spaces, we invite you to join in offering respect and gratitude to the many indigenous peoples that reside in the Chicagoland region, as well as their ancestors. I know that many of you listening today might already be familiar with Chicago Collections and our fabulous online resources that are free and open to all, and the Explore Chicago Collections portal. But for those of you who are joining us for the first time today, Chicago Collections Consortium is a consortium of over 60 museums, libraries, and cultural organizations, all working together solely for the preservation and promotion of Chicago's rich history. We do that through the sharing of our member collections through CCC's Explore portal, which provides free and open access to members' archival holdings, and through free public programs like the one being offered today and our digital exhibits. We invite you to visit the Explore website and check out these unique collections. We also encourage you to take time to visit CCC's website for a complete listing of upcoming events and programs. And be sure to mark your calendars for CCC's upcoming 2026 events. There's many that will be listed in the days ahead, and a few are already on there, so please check it out. I'd like to thank and acknowledge CCC donors shown here, whose generous funding allows us to offer amazing free programming events, as well as supporting our efforts with the Explore Chicago Collections portal. Now on to our program and our conversation with Laura. Laura, thanks so much for making time for our conversation today. I'm excited to learn more about Ozinga and its family archives. So let's begin.
So I have been very fortunate to be the corporate and family archivist since September of 2023. And the Ozinga organization really impressed me with their commitment and the way in which they do business and comport themselves as individuals as well. So if you can go to the next slide. So I took this right from our website. It is our purpose to make a positive impact on individuals, their families, and the community for generations. And this is so important because this speaks directly to also the purpose of having an archive and being able to provide both history that we maintain as archivists, but also ensure that we're gathering material on a regular basis in order to have that available for future generations. And the Ozinga company started in 1928. I'll have you go to the next slide. And this was actually the first image that I received from them as an example of some of the material that they had that they needed to archive. So Marty Ozinga, who is the CEO, had contacted Emily Meinhardt, who is at the Henry Crown and Company Archives, because he was interested in getting information about Material Services, which was a competitor of Ozinga's back in the day. And when he called the Crown Family Foundation, he asked who might be able to help him get this information. And the receptionist suggested he could talk to the archivist. And he said, "Who?" So that was the seed that was planted. And that was in 2021, I believe. And by 2023, I was the lucky person who got to have this job and take on this role as archivist.
And indeed lucky. And we have to put in a plug, Henry Crown Archives and Emily Meinhardt, who's a huge supporter of CCC. Henry Crown Archive is a corporate partner, similar to Ozinga, and has been for a long time. But the rich jewels that you would administer to of history for Ozinga. I mean, that's why I'm so excited today looking at this photo, that it speaks to not only the company but the community that the corporation serves and that rich history there. So tell us
Exactly.
more.
So the company itself was started in 1928 by Martin Ozinga Sr., and it was a coal and coke distributor, sales company. And so they sold coal to heat homes and businesses in Evergreen Park. So this is at 95th and Troy in Evergreen Park. The important part of this was when Marty decided to do this. The reason he decided to do it is because obviously they're having their 100th anniversary, and they wanted to be able to ensure that the story of how this business came to be and how important it was to the community could be articulated with supporting facts. And so, in looking at that, and in having had some time with the material that I got, I found that perhaps they were starting with the wrong generation. So if you can go to the next slide. So this actually is Martin DeMa, and Jake DeMa is driving that wagon. That is a truck farm that sits where Midway Airport now stands. And this generation, Martin's generation, is the same generation as Martin Sr.'s father, who was their immigrant ancestor. And the reason that's important is because he actually was the reason that Martin Sr. was able to conduct business the way he did. Always looking at supporting the community in ways that were both small and big. And so when Marty realized that they had this cache of material, these images were part of that. They wanted to ensure that they were properly processed and properly saved. So if you can go to the next slide.
And that word saved is so key because once they're gone, they're gone.
Gone
And
forever.
yes.
And for the archivists out there who are chuckling, this actually is 2 months after I had started. So I did not and had not seen the material prior to taking the job. I had faith that they knew that they had something important and that they wanted to preserve it and have it available for future generations. So this is the room that I started in. I recognized immediately that it was a very large collection, and with many issues, not unlike most archives. But we wanted to make sure that this was preserved and protected. Having said that, we have almost 200 and I have almost 280 boxes now of material that we hope will be available by 2028 to be used for research. If nothing else, for our 100th anniversary, and certainly to have the bulk of the photographic material, which is about 60 bankers boxes, up and available by the end of this year.
Well, bravo, because 2028's, really two blinks of an eye, so to speak. And, looking at this in your role, what were one of the discoverable aha jewel moments that you came upon?
So the most important part to me is the first person accounts. We found that Martin Sr.'s wife, Wilma Hoving Ozinga, kept a daily diary, and we have the diaries from 1937 to 1981. So 40 years or so of daily diaries that include um, amazing accounts. They're usually very brief. She was Dutch and she
Sure.
kept things very brief and to the point, but little historical facts. We were able to confirm when her three sons went into the service during World War II, not by their military records, but by her first person accounts of them both leaving and coming back. And there's letters between her son and his fiance from 1942 to 45. And again, that material is first person and includes both things that were happening locally. They speak specifically to the history of Englewood and Roseland and the southwest suburbs of Chicago in ways that are significantly deeper than what you might normally have.
Absolutely. I mean, what a unique snapshot of that, specific time period that researchers and, can jump in and find out more about. So
And in going
fascinating.
through the collection, we realized that we needed to focus more on that first generation, the immigrant generation, and how they conducted themselves in the community because they were the seed, if you will,
Mhm.
that grew. And the seeds that Frank Ozinga planted in order to be part of the community always in ways that were very impactful, both through monetary ways, but also through their church. And of course, the Ozinga organization is a Christian organization, and they are deeply connected to the Christian Reformed Church here. And again, going back to the start of several of the Christian Reformed churches in Oak Lawn and Evergreen Park. So there's plenty of research to be done there, as well as in the truck farming community where Frank started. That was how he started in his business. So we have this very rich, the Ozinga company obviously has records, and that's going to be hopefully a focus for processing for this year so that we have that prepared and ready for our 100th. But we can't extricate the business and the family from the community. It's just not possible. Everywhere they go, they're connected to the community. So we have um, the hopefully we'll, like as I mentioned, hopefully we'll be able to have a lot more of the photographic material available by the end of this year that we'll be able to get up on Explorer. And perhaps by 2027, we'll be able to open ourselves up. We've discussed whether we could possibly open up parts of the collection for some of the CPS history work that's done, and coordinate with some of the other collections here in Chicago, to help move that forward, as part of being active in the community.
We'll look forward to having that explore and then that opportunity to, have those collections in conversation with the other CCC member institutions too. So that crossover, if it's a student, general public, the researcher looking for a specific topic, it's just not only the history of the corporation, but those multi layers of as it relates to a family in that time period, in that geographic location, as it relates to contributions to the community at that time, the religious connections, etc. So, so much, I don't have to tell you, so much is there and so much to be done too. So
The other really fascinating part, the Ozingas kind of have been neglectful in embracing and letting people know that the First National Bank of Evergreen Park was started by Martin Ozinga Sr. And it was a bit of a passion of his, I believe, that he got from his father. We have, because I have the records that I have, we've seen that he was giving microloans out to people, when especially during tough times. So when they arrived here in 1893, it was at the height of the global depression. And of course, they had liquidated all of their belongings. They came here with 6 pieces of luggage. They had 3 children. And so he had some money in his pockets. And this is a slightly different version than what the Ozinga family had been sharing with one another, that, they were the classic poor immigrant family that came and got started. In this case, we believe that that was not the case. They actually had a little bit of money, but they used that. They used that to hold up their neighbors and the community, both supporting them by providing little microloans, and then as his truck farming business grew, he hired people and allowed them to work. So there is this significant thread that runs through the generations of philanthropy and support, and community connection. And I know it's kind of beating the dead horse, but they actually do it.
no, it's
And
exciting to hear, and especially from the corporate perspective of, remembering where you came from, and that recipe for success then and now, and what were that commitment that makes it successful, both on a commercial side, but also on a society side too, that you're, making a difference, not just for the sake of the dollar, but for the sake of the community that, you live in too. So,
well, and I actually, and you and I have not really talked about this. So obviously, there's more than just the Ozinga family in the collection. There are families that married into the Ozinga family. And the current generation's parents are both deceased, unfortunately. But their mom, who passed away in 2010, was Greek, and she had a huge family, and her parents ran what at the time they called a daycare, was actually a small school for young children. And we have all of the records of that. Imagine processing all of the images and records of children in and around Evergreen Park from the 1950s and 60s. So again, first person records of people, some of whom are likely living, that had this as their base.
And was this a
So
preschool, Laura? Was it a, uh-huh.
yes, it was a preschool, um, and fairly well known. Apparently, we I had a good laugh because our the Ozinga director of communications actually went there as a child. So he was interested in knowing if there were pictures available and that kind of thing, information available, because he remembered from being a very small child, being there and participating in that. So it's from a genealogical standpoint, I'll put on my genealogy cap. This collection also is incredibly rich. We have all the sales records. Someone mentioned, one of the family members mentioned in looking at the sales records that it looked like a Dutch phone book because all of the people that lived in and around Evergreen Park initially were from the Dutch community. So there's a lot of material there that could be considered genealogical. And of course, the philanthropic part is also equally deep. The Ozingas were responsible for Trinity College down in the southwest side, and lots of other philanthropic endeavors. The organization, I'll put this out, the Ozinga Foundation provides donations that equal a portion, 10% of our gross profit. So we have a foundation and we have our director of foundation. We were able to provide, I believe he said there were approximately 325 organizations that Ozinga supports in small ways and big ways. And that for the year 2025, back in 2022, I believe it was only 75. So I'm looking forward to looking into one of the generation's records to see where some of that philanthropy actually started, because the continuity of that I think is really important.
Well, and the fact that it's grown, and as we know in these current times, it's so very important to have that type of support and that type of commitment that's recognized by somebody in the area as a corporation.
And again, it speaks to them as the current owners, and I probably should have said this initially. The company is currently run by, well, as of today, run by five of the Generation 4 brothers and one of their first cousins. And so there are six of them that are active owners running the Ozinga conglomerate. It is no longer just a concrete company. They have many other entities. And so it is a privilege to work for this company. It really is. And I hope that the archives will be able to be as important a part of the community as the other activities that they've done to be supportive of both locally and more broadly.
And we're so thrilled that that's recognized. And it really became apparent. And I invite our listeners today to check out the podcast that you did with our friend. And it was Marty, right? Who was,
Yes, Marty has the Said in Stone
yeah,
podcast, and
awesome.
one of the first, it was not the first, but one of the first podcasts was with Sherman Dilla Thomas, who had spoken at CCC for the annual last year,
Speaking.
I believe. And he's such a remarkable person. I have to admit to being a little starstruck, which normally I'm not, but yeah, being able to do that and participate in that was really uplifting. That's the best way to put it. It was uplifting talking to him.
And it's really, I encourage people to check it out. Dilla Thomas spoke 2 years ago for the annual meeting, and just to hear Marty and yourself, Laura, share the excitement about the discoverables within archives and how they can be used, it's really well done. So,
Yes, as a matter of fact, I that was something that it came happened organically because as I mentioned, I was so enamored with him, and I simply asked the question, what's your favorite repository? And it kind of went from there. And hearing him discuss the importance of archives um, for researchers. Um, and to your point earlier, it's not easy out there. It's really challenging from a financial standpoint. And to be able to have the privilege that I have working at a place that is properly funded, I don't have that concern. It
and it
is a
recognizes
privilege.
the value, that recognize the value, because each of these boxes will need hands, and each piece of paper will be touched, will be evaluated, will be processed, will be et cetera, et cetera. But to support that and, to make that available to others. So, yeah, bravo.
Well,
But
we don't know what we're gonna find, which is
right,
probably the thing that is,
fun part,
that exactly. It is the fun part.
the discoverables. Well, let's talk about that though. Some of the collections that you've, processed as of today.
Yes, thank you. So yes, we have the business records, and we have those records going back to 1928. Some of them were in, I would call them deplorable condition. They were, I will be able to save them digitally, but we will have to call them from the collection just because of their condition. But everything from, financials to operations, to property purchases. And of course, typically we wouldn't keep financial records, but because they're so rich in what they express about the community, obviously we will maintain those. And then there's the family material. We have the diaries of Wilma that I talked about, letters from Marty to Janet DeMa. Um, and then also under the family, we do have that philanthropic set and church related records, along with the photographic material, about 60 bankers' boxes of material from the late 19th century to 2018. And some truly remarkable images. As I mentioned, one of the families was Greek, and we have images from the 1920s and 30s that are truly, truly remarkable. So the collection is fairly large, and we haven't even talked about what's to come in. We
Good
haven't
point.
gotten there
Good
yet.
point. Yes, because history is happening today. Exactly.
Absolutely. And so we'll be working on digitizing both, preparing for and working through the processes of digitizing, and then also ingesting new material that's produced, especially by the business, that will again be solely digital.
That's a lot, Laura. I really appreciate this quick snapshot. It just has me asking for more, but also the work that you're doing and that promotion of what's needed for an advocate for corporations as an archivist, someone to capture that history. And we've talked about this earlier too. Just on the corporate front, on the marketing side, this how rich histories can be used, preserved, shared for the researchers, but for the own integrity of the corporation too. So we look forward to adding more corporate partners to our community here at Chicago Collections Consortium, and really appreciate your time today and sharing all the rich history there. So thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you. I appreciate it.